Today on LA Currents, we celebrate the women of the Los Angeles City Council. In a historic first, Los Angeles has more women seated on its council than ever before. Nithya Raman. Her background as an urban planner has come full circle as she heads the Housing and Homelessness Committee. Later, we'll meet the newest member of the City Council. And Police joins Imelda Padilla, who was sworn in only 3 months ago, but has held a dream of being in public service from a very young age. But to start, she broke barriers with her selection as the first Black woman to lead LA's 10th district. Born and bred in LA, Heather Hutt spent many years behind the scenes working with politicians such as Kamala Harris. Our Anita Bennett speaks with Councilwoman Hutt about her priorities in providing housing options, basic street services, and an unarmed response for her constituents.
In September 2022, the City Council confirmed Heather Hutt to represent Council District 10. Now, she has since been reappointed until 2024 to complete the term left vacant by former Councilmember Mark Ridley Thomas. Now, a year into the job, we're checking in with Councilwoman Hutt to discuss progress in CD10. Councilwoman Hutt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Anita.
I think the big question people want to know is, are you going to run for re-election?
I am going to run for election because I was selected.
Yes.
So now this is an election. And I like my job. I feel like there's so much work to do, and I want to be there to do more work. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, I must run.
Mm-hmm. You say there's a lot of work to do. What are your future plans?
So we have to really work on what we've started already. Operationalizing renter protections, making sure that people are not evicted. We have to also build more affordable housing so that we have options. We have a low inventory. People don't have options, and that's why the rent's so high. I've also moved another significant amount just into street tree services. Trees hadn't been cut in 7 years. So when we had our heavy rain and wind, we didn't have all the fall down onto vehicles and buildings like other districts have. And so common sense, basic services are really important in this district. We have unarmed response that'll be coming through my transportation committee. I would love to be a part of bringing in an unarmed response for people that are driving and, their taillights out. Do they really need to have armed response to that? Or their tags are expired. Do they really need to have a police officer pulling them over? So I'm excited to see what that report back looks like and to do some work to implement.
Mm-hmm. Housing the unhoused is the biggest issue anyone you talk to in the city in terms of residents. What are some of the other issues that are important to residents in CD10? Oh
my goodness, we have so much. As chair of transportation, people are really concerned about speeding. They're concerned about speeding around elementary schools in particular. Mm-hmm. They're really concerned about potholes and just a general mobility plan, which I learned as chair of transportation that we didn't have one. So I did a motion for a 5-year mobility plan so we could talk about infrastructure and what that looks like. We should be proactive about people movement. Okay. What we need are upgrades in our crosswalks, having the blinky lights, if you've seen those, especially if they're crosswalks that don't come with a signal light. That's an issue. Repainting our stop lines so that a boulevard stops, there is a strong white line so people could see it and prepare for their stop. Things like that, maintenance that we need in CD10, and we've been able to go through our community and determine where we need them first.
Fights for LA!
One of the things that we did when we did the mobility plan is we went into the community to the Barack and Michelle Obama Sports Complex, which is in CD10, and all the members of the committee heard from the community what they're concerned about. Vision Zero, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety. We had about 50 bicycle riders come to the committee on their bicycles, park their bikes right there, and then to have a real live community discussion about their safety. And out of that came a motion to reach out to the state of California and ask them to put pedestrian and bicycle safety in the handbook. So that when people are applying for their driver's license, it's a part of the questionnaire and it's part of the education.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Right, so we should be able to see that in the next bill cycle in the state.
Okay. You mentioned a motion, and you just introduced another motion recently to ban cashless business. Can you explain to us what that means and why it's important?
Oh my goodness, I don't know if you have enough time. But what I witnessed were people being left out of this economy because they only had cash. In Los Angeles, about 7% of the people are unbanked, about 15% are underbanked. And so what are we doing? Sending them to somewhere else because they can't buy an item because they only have cash? And you know, what does that do to your persona? What does that do to your self-esteem? Also, we have to think about domestic violence. You know, if somebody is fleeing domestic violence, they don't want to use their cards. That's a tracker, right? If they have a partner that shares an account or shares a credit card with them and they're trying to flee, they need to be able to do a transaction with cash, which means buy gas, which means get into a hotel room, all of those things for their own protection, and they should be able to do that. So I'm looking at different instances where people are left out of the economy, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Especially not in a big city where we have 4 million people, right? So we know New York has already banned cashless. Berkeley and San Francisco. So we have examples in California where it's actually working. And then once I did the motion, I started getting an influx of emails from people saying, hey, I went to a concert at the Greek Theater, which is a city property. And I tried to buy my kid a t-shirt and I only had cash and they wouldn't let me. And so then she went home and said, sorry, I couldn't buy the t-shirt from the concert. And then there's this whole mistrust, and you know, the child was crying. It was just a bad experience for them overall, and she hasn't made it up to the child either.
Oh, that's too bad.
So that's not uncommon. If you win a ticket to a Dodger game, you should be able to buy your kids some popcorn.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't right now. So we have to do better. We have to be inclusive, and this is really about equity.
I need to ask you, what is the atmosphere at council? Are you able to get things done? Because we have had a number of council members indicted, convicted. So how's the council doing?
Well, our city council members are very intentional about getting work done. That's why we're there. We come every day to do the work, and we are continuing that. We're not stopping because people are having challenges. We're doing as much as we possibly can. So we have quorums, we're in our committees, we are voting on very important things to our constituents.
I see you out and about quite a bit. What do you find the most rewarding about the job?
It's all about the housing, right? I met a mother and a daughter, and they were in 2 tents off of La Brea next to each other. And now they're in housing, and the daughter is at a job now. So they went from the tent to bridge housing and to a key to an apartment. The mother's getting mental health services because they were domestic violence victims, and the daughter is at work. And I'm like, you know, that's what it's all about.
So it sounds like there's a lot going on. What's it been like for you? Because before you were behind the scenes, you worked for the council member, and you also worked for former Senator Kamala Harris. So what's it been like making that transition?
Moving from being in the weeds to moving to being the principal is very different. And it's taken a year for me to get comfortable in letting staff do their work. It's different, but I love it. So
That's good.
Getting used to it.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, Councilwoman Heather Hutt, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
here and discussing these issues with us.
An urban planner by profession, Nithya Raman successfully set up homeless services in India and worked with Time's Up Entertainment before deciding to enter local politics. I sit down with Councilmember Raman about a range of issues including short-term rentals, homelessness, and redistricting, and how solutions in her district can impact the wider city of LA. Activist, urban planner, and 2.5 years ago, she took her seat as a council member for the 4th District of Los Angeles. I'm delighted to be joined today by Nithya Raman. So nice to have you back.
Thank you for having me. Very excited.
You are chair of the City Council Housing and Homelessness Committee. What does that mean, and where are we in that whole situation?
So I became the chair at the beginning of this year, really. The Housing Committee and the Homelessness and Poverty Committee used to be separate. But to me, housing and homelessness are two sides of the same coin, and we have to be able to consider them together. So I asked the council president to combine them and to put me at the leadership of that committee. And over this past year, what we've really done is to try and create what I think is the most essential thing for us to be able to move out of this moment of crisis, which is a citywide and holistic response to our crisis.
What are you focused on in committee?
One of the big things that we've been talking about in the committee is how to move from a district by district approach to homelessness to a citywide approach to homelessness. Right now in the city, a lot of the actions that we need to take in order to address our homelessness crisis, like finding shelter beds, that's an urgent task because we have less than 1/3 of the shelter beds that we need for our total unhoused population, which means close to 30,000 people are living on LA's city streets, which is absolutely a humanitarian crisis. Right now, what happens is that every council district looks for shelter options on its own. We're not really staffed to do that. We're not equipped to do that in many ways. We have to find a citywide approach to finding shelter. I think when you're talking about centralizing something like the response to homelessness, that does mean that you're taking power away from individual council members. And so we have to create a system that really delivers on outcomes in order for council members to trust that they can cede a little bit of power and still see results in their own neighborhoods, that they're able to see encampments resolved, that they're able to see people get into housing. Currently, the system is not delivering on that. I felt like I was very alone in my first couple of years in focusing on this, and now I don't feel alone at all. It feels like the thing that the city is focused on in a way that hasn't been the case before.
There's also an issue that you have been addressing recently in terms of short-term rentals and where they are appropriate and are a benefit to a homeowner in order for income opportunities, and then when they are just a huge problem to everyone.
Yeah, Council District 4 has a lot of short-term rentals, whether it's apartments in Hollywood where people are renting out bedrooms for visiting tourists, or homes in the hills which are being rented out and being sometimes used as party houses. Short-term rentals pose a challenge for the city in terms of their very existence. They are a resource for people who are coming in and staying here, but they can be real challenges for the neighborhoods around them. They can also take affordable housing off the market. The city has a short-term rental ordinance that it adopted in 2018. What we've found, both anecdotally and in the experience of many of our constituents and through data, is that that ordinance is simply not being enforced in the way that it should be. It can take 2 to 3 years for a single illegal short-term rental to be cited by the city. The other piece is that residents, when they were seeing problems in their own neighborhoods, were writing to the Department of City Planning and asking, does my neighbor have a valid short-term rental license? Is he supposed to be renting his room out? Because I see different people going in and out all the time. The Department of City Planning used to take weeks to respond to those kinds of inquiries. Finally, thanks to our work, we have a publicly available short-term rental database where you can put in an address and you can see whether there have been complaints at that address. And so residents are far more empowered to be able to address issues in their neighborhood if they're seeing it, thanks to the work of council, but we have a long way to go to actually be able to solve this problem.
Since you took the council member position, there's been a lot of tumultuous change within the council at large, and now there's a bigger conversation about expanding the council and redistricting. Where is that right now?
So I underwent redistricting in my first year, and my district was radically changed. I lost about 40% of my old district, and I have new neighborhoods, not so new anymore. I've already been representing them for almost 2 years, and they're wonderful neighborhoods that we've had an opportunity to really get to know by serving them, and it's been great. But the way that process played out was, how do I put this? I think it felt to a lot of observers and participants, including myself, that redistricting was done to benefit individual council members and their power, as opposed to benefiting the people of Los Angeles and how they're represented. So after that redistricting process happened, I put forward a motion along with Councilmember Krikorian asking for the city to implement independent redistricting. This is what's done at the state level. This is what's done across many jurisdictions across America. It's the best practice for redistricting. And after a long time, when it didn't move forward in council, after the tapes came out, those scandalous, racist tapes, finally, that motion is being heard through a newly formed ad hoc committee on governance reform, which I think the tapes really necessitated. In fact, I asked for that committee to be created. And now I sit as the vice chair, the council president is the chair. And I think it's an exciting forum to talk about how the city of Los Angeles can improve some of these big processes to make sure that the city is truly working for its people, as opposed to for the benefit of itself or for its own elected representatives. Independent redistricting is one of the things that we're considering, but the other thing that's also on the table is decreasing the size of council districts. Right now, individual council districts are 250 to 260,000 people large. These are the largest districts of any major city in America, much larger than New York or Chicago or Boston. And I think it's time to think about whether smaller districts might serve constituents better. And the city is now really figuring out whether we can accommodate that, how would it change decision making, and how would it actually improve constituent services. Because if you cut the size of council district, but you also cut the size of council staff, are you going to get better service as a constituent? I'm not sure.
Just on a little bow on the end of this conversation, there have been some fun things. And I'll just say that, you got to celebrate the Hollywood sign,
yes.
Turned 100 years old. What an iconic image for the city, and how fun was it to celebrate the Hollywood sign?
Yeah, so, we've had a really, really fun time with some of the incredible, iconic things that Council District 4 is lucky to have in it. We have the Griffith Observatory, we have the Hollywood sign, we have the Hollywood Bowl, we have all of these incredible gifts, which I think are more than just Council District 4 amenities. They are representative of the entire city. Mm-hmm. And truly, you couldn't say that more about the Hollywood sign. It is symbolic of Los Angeles in a way that I think no other tourist attraction is. So I'm really excited to be representing it. I'm really excited to be celebrating it. And I hope everyone can take a hike soon.
So if people want to have information about what's happening in Council District 4, what's the most direct way for them to do that?
You can visit our website, councildistrict4.lacity.gov, or you can come to our social. We have CD4 Los Angeles on Instagram and on X and on Facebook. So please come visit us on the internet or come visit us in person.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for coming back, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Imelda Padilla is the newest council member in Los Angeles. Padilla campaigned on 7 key issues and has hit the ground running since she took office in August. She spoke to Ann Police about building consensus and coalitions to tackle an extensive agenda in the Northeast San Fernando Valley.
Our guest is the newest member of the Los Angeles City Council, sworn in August 2023. Representing Council District 6, we're happy to welcome Councilmember Imelda Padilla to LA Currents. Welcome, Imelda. Glad you could join us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
What have been the top priorities for you in District 6 that you have seen immediately?
Well, I ran on a platform of 7 topics, with homelessness being at the top, public safety second, job creation third, fourth, built environment, and then 5th was parks, then libraries, and then an interest in supporting youth programming. And in the first 3 months, we've kind of tried to set the tone to get our feet wet with all 7, but mostly focusing on the importance of homelessness. Very excited to announce and to have accomplished already hosting an Inside Safe in my district in partnership with Mayor Bass, where we were able to get 40 plus individuals housed. And that was an encampment that hadn't been touched for more than over 2.5 years. Ooh. And I've been very intentional about also shifting outreach over to regions where we have massive amounts of RVs. What makes it tricky is that some of these individuals don't consider themselves to be homeless. They see the RV as their home. So we have to really think through those nuances.
How have you earned the trust of the council, first off, but also your constituents?
Well, the trust of my constituents, I like to think, is something that I've been working on for multiple years, which is why I think I won my election overwhelmingly with a 10-point lead, is that people knew who I was. People know that I'm a hard worker, people know that I care, and people know that I pride myself on being accessible. And in terms of my council, it's one day at a time. We have to work together, because at the end of the day, what I think all members of the council want to do is improve Los Angeles.
CD6 is underfunded, has been notoriously for many years. Are you working towards some things that will bring an infusion of money into your district?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think was done very correctly and has benefited the community is that as land use decisions are made and new opportunities come for big job creators, sometimes we utilize the tool of a community benefits agreement. In my district, we have been able to do some of those, and now that leasing contracts are coming up out of the Van Nuys Airport, that is definitely a model that I am looking into, because while these vendors on the airport are going to be generating millions of dollars as a job creator, it would be nice to get a piece of that profit and immerse it back into the Van Nuys community.
The long-term work that you've put in is really what has gotten you to where you're at. Where do you see yourself going from here? Continuing on in the city realm?
Well, I have a passion for local politics, right? There was definitely a few opportunities where people in the community mentioned, are you going to look into the state seats that overlap where I live?
Right.
But my heart was not in Sacramento. I really like local politics, local governance. So right now I'm laser focused on the opportunity and the task at hand of accomplishing good things as a city council member. And what am I going to do immediately after that? I don't know yet. But what I can say is that I do know that in retirement, I would love to be able to teach at the community college level.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I want to teach Poli-Sci 1, Poli-Sci 2 at community college would be quite a treat.
Right. Talking about your work with the homeless, that was number 1 on your list of 7. Also in there, though, was your work with the youth. What kind of plans are you hoping to implement for the youth of your district?
Well, I've been conversations with Councilmember Monica Rodriguez, who it's her goal, it would be her ideal that we at the city council level can have more oversight into things related to funding of youth programs. So I'm in constant conversation with her about that. I want to make sure that as we formulate this department, that we find a way to get more young people employed, right? And having productive summers. I always tell young people, never have an unproductive summer. Either you intern, you work, you have to go to summer school. You know, it's not a time to just sit on the couch. So that is something that I would like to do. But in addition to that, you know, I like to consider myself a very methodical person. So first things first, I've also talked on the campaign trail about how I care about cleaning up our parks and supporting our libraries. So I'm kind of immersing myself in both those spaces and in conversations of our family source centers. The 6th District, for the first time ever, now has a family source center that's coming to Panorama City. So I'm talking to the awardee about where they should be placed and the partners they should be talking to, while simultaneously figuring out how to clean up some of the parks that have been neglected, and also supporting our libraries to really create a culture in Los Angeles of reading is cool. You want to grow up to be a cool, productive adult, read some books, and read every book that falls in your hands.
Yeah, I agree. What does your family, siblings, your mother, what do they think of you being an elected politician in Los Angeles?
You know, I think it's different for each of them. You know, I think for my oldest sisters, they're very proud, praying for me all the time, very nervous, because they understand the pressure and the honor and responsibility that comes with it. I think my brothers too they treat me from the perspective of, I'm not surprised, sis, we knew you would be here someday. So they're very proud and very excited. I think they enjoy people in the community saying, oh, I saw your sister here, I saw your sister there. I could tell that they like that. And my mother is just ecstatic and really humbled by the experience. She's somebody that goes to church every day now that she's in retirement. So when people, you know, give her, as we say in Spanish, porras, like a congratulations for winning, she's honored. But you know, she's also, one thing that's happening to her that didn't happen before is people are asking for street lights to be fixed or streets to be repaved, and she likes that.
Oh, she's
honored.
Okay,
she's
good.
Like, oh, I didn't know we can do that for you. So she is elevating it to me and my team, and then we work from there.
You are a first-generation Mexican American. When you're on the council, in the meetings, does that impact or shade anything that decisions that you make? It must. You have a certain perspective that maybe some others don't have.
Well, you know, I think for me on an individual level, as somebody who, you know, the most personal part of me, component to my own personality outside of my ethnic background, is that I was a special needs kid. I grew up with something called rickets, so I used to get picked on a lot. So my own personal story made me tough, and you know, there's this perception that Mexican American women are tough, or that we're very aggressive. But I know that with me, it has nothing to do with my ethnic background. It has to do with the fact that life just put me through adversity, and here I am. Because when I'm on the council, I like to think of myself as representing everybody in the 6th District, which is Mexican American, heavy Filipino, heavy Armenian, older white, older African American. It's a very diverse region. I like to think that District 6 kind of looks like what all of Los Angeles is going to be looking like in the next 10 years. So when I'm on the council, I try to bring that, the perspective of being an individual who grew up in the 6th District, a community that has been underfunded and underrepresented, and also in need of some investment because we have huge potential.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Padilla, thank you so much for joining us. We're glad to have you on.
Thank you.